5:53 p.m. Central Time, Wednesday, March 29th. James is with me today, and we are going to be doing a mock draft. We
Best time
are
of year. Second best time.
just what's that?
I said it's the second best time of year.
Second best. Just under a month till the first round. Let's just not waste any time. Let's get right into it. How about you do odds, because then that way you pick for Green Bay, I will take evens, and then I will pick for Philly.
Cool. And by the way, this is kind of what I would do. It's not necessarily what I think would happen, and obviously we're not going to account for trades, especially this far out. Just gets a little too messy.
Now, I will say I will base mine on what I think the team is going to do.
Okay. So, I honestly think it'll be pretty close anyways,
right.
So all good. Okay.
So you got Carolina with the first pick, and like we said, no trades. I think we covered everything.
Good.
So Carolina.
Let's do it. I think a lot of people are going this way. It is the odds-on betting favorite. I think it's the type of player that Frank Reich really likes, and to be honest, I do think he is like the highest floor quarterback on the list. I think a lot of people would say Bryce Young, but I went C.J. Stroud here. I think they kind of want somebody they can plug and play right away. I think Bryce Young could be that in principle, but you know me, I've already said a bunch of times I think Bryce Young's going to be a bust, not because I don't think he's good at football, but because I just don't think he's going to hold up for a 17-game series. So yeah, I'm going C.J. Stroud. Hopefully he can break that Ohio State curse, because I do really like Frank Reich, and I want him to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, he's the betting favorite right now, but so is Aiden Hutchinson this time last year, and we saw how that turned
could
out.
Definitely change. I'm sure things will leak,
right.
In the coming weeks. They can really afford to say whatever the hell they want, to be honest. I mean, they can come right out a week before and say this is who we're taking. It doesn't really matter.
So then that gives me Houston at number 2. I would imagine the pick would be Bryce Young.
Yeah, and just not to jump in on your thing, but I think if there is going to be a place he can go and be successful, it will be a place like the Texans, where he doesn't have to play a lot of cold weather games.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be good right away. I don't think anybody's really expecting that. So I do think that's a good landing spot, maybe even potentially the best landing spot for him. So I think that's a good pick, and good pick for you and a good pick for the Texans.
All right. So Arizona, I'll be honest, I don't think Arizona's going to have this pick by the time the week of the draft rolls around.
Was just going to say that. I mean, prime trade candidate. I mean, there's a lot of teams that can really trade up into that spot depending on how they feel about Richardson and Levis. I just went the safe route. I think they're really going to try to, and I think it's a pretty similar player, to be honest with you, Chandler Jones. So I went with Will Anderson. I think with the Jalen Carter kind of character concerns and the arrests and things like that, I think he's probably the safest player in the entire draft. I think he has a chance to truly be a star. I think that kind of lighter frame speed rusher that Von Miller really made, not popular, but people, you don't necessarily need to be 270 to be an edge defender anymore, as long as you have the speed and the tenacity. So I think Will Anderson's going to be he'll probably get 10 sacks his rookie year. I wouldn't be surprised if he was up in 12, 13, 14, to be honest with you.
So that brings me to Indianapolis, who is going to take a quarterback for weeks. I have penciled in Will Levis here, but since the combine, I have changed my attitude.
Wow.
I'm going Anthony Richardson here. And it seems like the attitude has changed around the league. It sounds like Richardson's not going to get out of the top 4.
I like that. I personally had Will Levis on mine, but I did have quarterback, and I personally would take Richardson over him, but I just thought Will Levis was maybe slightly more pro ready with the age and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's a really good pick.
So then you got Seattle.
Yeah. Jalen Carter, I think it's the best player in the draft. I think he's going to go up there with, a real teacher like Pete Carroll. And I think, first of all, they need help at that position. It's kind of if they've had conversations with him and they think that everything will be fine, I think that's a really good landing spot for him. And that's who I would take there, personally.
Have you noticed Seattle fans trying to be like, oh, we take high character guys? I'm like, Pete Carroll has had his fair share of not troublemakers, but
even back to USC.
Yeah.
And I think it really depends. It's like, is the guy a bad guy, or was he young and just doing some dumb stuff? Because I think there's really examples of both heading into the NFL. There's guys who had character concerns and never were a problem, and there's guys, frankly, that were great and ended up, Deshaun Watson, who nobody had a negative thing to say about, was actually, kind of a fucking weirdo. So, freaking weirdo. So, yeah, Jalen Carter, I think, is a really good pick there.
So, I will say, Carter, I had him in my mock to Philly at 10.
Oh, I would have loved it.
And in hindsight, I think he falls not that far. If you look at everyone else's mock, he's still in that 5, 6, 7 range, and that's probably what it's going to end up being.
Which is still a fall, you know what I mean, compared to where he really could have went. So I think that's fair. I mean, yeah, I think that's fair. But yeah, Seahawks, Jalen Carter, 5.
So now we get to Detroit. Carter's off the board. I mean, I don't think Levis is out of the question here, but I don't think they'll do it.
No, I don't either.
This is one that's going to, I think, throw people off, but after his showing at the Combine, I think we need to prepare for him to be the first player at this position off the board, and that's Christian Gonzalez.
That's who I have in mind.
Yeah.
It's a good pick. I really think, they're an improved defense away from being,
they got to revamp that secondary, and they've done a good job in free agency, but they need long-term options now.
I agree, and I think that's a really good pick, and I think that's who they should pick, unless somebody like Will Anderson or even a Jalen Carter falls there. I never would blame a team for doing that, but they're set on the offensive line, so it's not like they're going to take one of the tackles or anything like that. And I do think the best player to position of need is definitely Christian Gonzalez. I think he's going to be a really good player, so I like that pick. Raiders. I personally think they should pick a quarterback because they can, in theory, sit him for.
I agree. I don't think they're going to do it. I did mock Levis to them in my mock this week, but I immediately regretted it.
And that's who I'm going to go here. In my mock, I actually had Anthony Richardson, but I think they should, and I think there's a good chance of it. I mean, they know that.
I don't think it's out of the question that they trade up. I actually think it's likely because if Seattle, and I don't think it's out of the question that Seattle trades up for Richardson either. But I don't think either of them are trading up for Levis. And I'm not sure they draft Levis if he's there.
I don't either. So we'll see. But I am going to go Levis here. It's a pick that I don't really like, to be honest with you. But it's kind of just one of those things where I'm like, they don't have a quarterback. I mean, okay, you pay Jimmy G, blah, blah, blah. But, they have to do something. And that's just kind of one of those positions, in my opinion, you just need to keep taking a swing at until you hit somebody. And I do, for what it's worth, I mean, I get it. He's a little shaky in the pocket. He's a little older, but I'm a sucker for a laser beam, man. And oh my God, does he have it?
I mean, I know he's a project, so he's got more than one red flag. But
dude, I was watching.
Other than his age, I love everything about him.
I was like, holy shit, this dude has a laser, dude, and I love it. I mean, he really did look like Aaron Rodgers throwing. Now, obviously, I don't expect him to be an Aaron Rodgers level player. Probably a top 5 quarterback ever, but. The traits from a physical perspective are definitely there. Big, strong guy, athlete. I mean, absolute laser. He could probably throw a football 75 yards in the air. So
probably.
I really like him. I don't like him there, but that's who I'll take.
So then it is Atlanta at number 8. This pick seems pretty obvious. I don't think. Well, the quarterbacks are off the board. Even if one was available, I don't think they'd pick one. I think they're pretty good at the O-line. They could go Witherspoon here, but they got to fix that pass rush. I'm going to go with Tyree Wilson.
That's exactly who I had. I think the Falcons are there's no tank in the NFL, don't get me wrong, but I think they're thinking, we're going to be a bottom 3 team next year, or at least on paper. Who knows if Desmond Ridder ends up being pretty decent. That won't be the case because their division's terrible, but I think they're in the Drake May, Caleb Williams sweepstakes. And I think that's the right decision. I think a lot of people are saying go after Lamar. And I could get that for kind of one of these middling teams. You're not going to get unless you trade 2 firsts, blah blah blah, everything to get up in the top 3 next year. But I do think even without trading, they're going to be top 5 at worst, and it'll be a lot easier for them to trade up into the top 1 or 2. So I don't know if it was Middlecoff or Colin Cowherd made a really good point. A lot of the bad teams next year are already going to have their quarterback. The Colts, the Panthers, a lot of these teams that I think are only going to win probably 4 or 5 games are not going to be drafting a quarterback, so they will be willing to
It's
trade
looking like that 2016 draft when who had the 1 and 2 pick? I know the Browns had the second pick because they traded it to Philly, and that's who they drafted Wentz with, or that's what they used to draft Wentz. What was the other team?
The Rams.
No, but the Rams traded up. The Titans.
Did they? I thought
it was
that
the
was
Titans. The Titans
had
that
the
pick.
year they won like 3 games when they moved from St. Louis. But yeah, I'm sure you know better than I do.
But it was that year. I do remember that now. It was the next year, I think, that they had a really bad year, and the Titans had that pick. But it looks similarly to that, where I think we're going to see 2 teams trade up for the top 2 picks. So now, am I up? Yeah, I'm up with Chicago.
No, I'm up.
No, you. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
Yeah. I think the Bears can really go in so many directions here, and what they should do is just take the highest player on their board. I don't even care if they're stacked at that position. But I did take Peter Skoronski. I do think, based on what they're saying, I can't sit here and act like I watch O-lineman tape, but outside of the short arms, I mean, he's just like a fantastic
He
prospect.
reminds me so much of Rashad. Is it Rashawn Slater? I almost said Rashad.
Yeah. And they're saying, like, worst case scenario, he's like an all-pro level guard, and I'm fine with that.
I'll take that. I don't care about this being a top 10 pick. I'll take an all-pro guard tomorrow.
Exactly, and that's I don't want to say that's a worst case scenario. Obviously, worst case scenario is bust, but like a probable scenario is he's a very, very good guard, and best case scenario he ends up being a really good right tackle. I don't think he is a left tackle. But I think he can be a really good player, and I've kind of come around to the fact that the Eagles might draft him if he gets to 10. It just they don't have a hole at right guard because they can put Cam Jurgens there, but I think they're thinking, yeah, we can slot in a starter at right guard right away, and then in a couple years when Lane Johnson retires, we can just bump him right out to right tackle, and that should work fine. But yeah, I'm going to go Skoronski there.
That pick makes a lot of sense. The Bears, I mean, I don't think Witherspoon's out of the question, just they go best player available.
Yep.
But they got to fix that O-line. It does seem like they're committed to Justin Fields. So, and Skoronski can play 4 of the 5 positions or whatever, so that makes a lot of sense. Philly now. Witherspoon's on the board.
It's funny we have our each other's teams.
Well, that's why I did this.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to like this, but I don't think Howie Roseman's going to be able to help himself. I'm going to go with Nolan Smith.
No, I love that.
Okay.
That's actually who I was thinking of because
the dude had a stupid combine.
I know, and I just listen. I've really come around on the speed rusher. I really have, because right now the Eagles have 2 speed rushers on the outside, and they both had double-digit sacks. I mean, I like obviously I like physical traits, especially at the lines, but I'm there. I mean, I don't think there's a way he can be a terrible player. Maybe he's not great against the run or something like that, but I think I think his like floor is like a Yannick Ngakoue, like a guy that can just get you 8 or 9 sacks basically no matter what, just with his speed. I'm fine with that. I actually really like that pick.
All right, so now we're on to Tennessee.
So they just traded, if I'm not mistaken, their pass rusher. I do think tackle is in play here. That's who I actually ended up picking here. But since this guy is still on the board, I think I'm going to take him, Lucas Van Ness.
Okay.
I think he's a guy that might not be like a 14, 15 sack a year guy, which you would really like out of somebody this high, but I do think he's going to be very solid against the run, which I think is honestly just starting to get really underrated with defensive ends. I think everybody looks at tackle or at sacks, which rightfully so. Those are game changing plays, but if you can get pushed around in the run game, I think that is just such an underrated way to get your ass kicked in the NFL on a regular basis. And he's just a big, solid ass dude, man. And I think worst case scenario, he can be like a Brandon Graham type player that can get you like 9 sacks and just be very stout against the run. So I actually really like that pick, and that's where I'm going to go there.
Yeah, he's young, athletic. I like him. I know you texted me the other day saying that you weren't as high on him when he was visiting the Eagles, but
I've come around. I don't necessarily like him at 10, but if the Eagles could trade back to like 15, 16, which I don't think will be the case or anything, I wouldn't mind him there.
I think if anything, the Eagles trade up to get Wilson. If they can.
I agree. I could totally see that. I really could.
So then we get to Houston at 12. I was going to take Van Ness here. I don't think who's the new coach? D'Amico Ryans is going to be able to help himself. They got to fix that pass rush. But Van Ness is off the board. It's a little early for Murphy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I could see that, though.
I think Witherspoon's in play. If Skoronski was available, I think he would be in play here too. Yep. But Paris Johnson and Broderick Jenkins, I think, are tackles. They don't really need a tackle because they signed Laramie Tunsil. Titus Howard took a big step last year. I don't like it. I'll go with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Give your quarterback a playmaker.
I never have a problem with like the quarterback wide receiver stack and like let's just have them on their rookie deals grow with each other. Right. I don't mind that pick at all. I do think it's probably a little high for him, but I also don't think this is some like stack draft where there's like a very set like top 10 players or top 8 players. I think after honestly Tyree Wilson at 8, it's kind of a complete free for all. So I really don't mind that pick at all.
Yeah, I mean, Witherspoon, if they didn't have, who is the guy I want to say Greedy Williams. I know that's not right.
He's on the Eagles now.
Derek Stingley Jr. If they didn't have him, I would pick Witherspoon here. And it still could be Witherspoon. Just have 2 solid rookie corners for the next 3 or 4 years. But I don't think that they'll do that, so that's why I went with Smith and Jigba. So now you get the Jets, who for now still have this pick.
I think they kind of have to go tackle here, and it's kind of your flavor here. Do you want a Broderick Jones or a Paris Johnson? In my mock, I have Paris Johnson, but that's because I had the Titans taking Broderick Jones.
Right.
It's kind of like your flavor of what you want. Do you want maybe somebody who's a slightly better athlete or a guy who's just an absolute mountain of a man? I'll go Paris Johnson though.
Yeah. Unless the 3 tackles are off the board, I don't see a scenario if the Jets keep this pick where they don't use it on O-line.
Yeah.
New England, this feels easy to me, although I think Witherspoon is very much in play here.
That's who I have, for what it's worth.
They do a lot of homework. Belichick does a lot of homework on corners. They don't mind having 6, corners drafted in the first 2 rounds on their roster. But with one of those tackles still on the board, I'm going to go with Broderick Jenkins.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I could totally see that. I think, maybe he's not the best drafter in the sense that he...
Well, I'll tell you right now, he's not going to draft a receiver at that position.
No, 100%. Yeah. And what I meant by he's not the best drafter is the player maybe that he ends up pick, but I don't think he picks dumb positions. So, I could totally see him, taking a tackle there. I don't mind that pick at all. So, Packers, and listen, I know you think this is high, and I know he's like the 4th rated person on people's draft board. I don't give a shit. I think he's going to be the best one. I took Darnell Washington.
Oh, okay. No, I have warmed up to Darnell Washington. I mean, and it's not that I was completely against it. I was like, man, that just seems early. Yeah. The dude is made for that Shanahan, I almost said McCoy. Who am I thinking of? McVay, LaFleur, and Zach Taylor offense.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I just love him as a player. I mean, he's just big. I think I saw him make some of those acrobat catches at the combine, or it might have been his pro day, but I was just like, dude, this guy is just untapped. Like, the reason he doesn't have insane stats is just because he wasn't utilized in that way, and he totally could be. I think the only fucking quarterback I've ever seen who doesn't love to throw to the tight end is Aaron Rodgers, which is why you never put you never spent a high pick there. But I think a player like Jordan Love, who's, really going to need a safety blanket, it's a great tight end is a great pick.
Here's my thing with Green Bay. And I understand the people who still want to say they need to draft receivers. I agree. Tight end this year is a bigger need for them than receiver.
I agree, and he's easily the best blocker, at least just based on tools. I can't sit here and be like, yeah, he's more technically sound than Michael Mayer or Dalton Kincaid or something like that. But
No, but he
it,
has some untapped potential that I want to get a hold of.
I agree, man. When I saw the video of them all pushing the sled and he just walked that fucking thing down the field and everyone else was barely, I was like, dude, this guy is an absolute freak. Like, worst case scenario, you have a guy that can be a red zone threat for you because he's 6'7" and he'll just block his ass off. For
I think, I mean, they're already comparing him to Mercedes Lewis, and I'm like, so you're telling me this
better.
dude is. I don't think, I'm not sure Mercedes Lewis is a Hall of Famer, but he's had a fantastic career. And you're going to tell me, like, maybe worst case scenario, this dude's a sixth offensive lineman, red zone target, like Mercedes Lewis was?
I'll take it.
And then, just untapped potential as a pass catcher. Yeah, I'm really high on that pick right now, or
And
that selection.
And I mean, I just think that's exactly what Jordan Love needs. Just somebody who, I mean, worst case scenario, he can just go do these curl routes and just absolutely box out whoever's in front of him, and you can just hit him in the chest, and you're going to get 7 yards off of it. I mean, I just think he's like a really high floor. But I think his true pro comparison is probably maybe. I mean, he's obviously bigger, but George Kittle more than Mercedes Lewis. Like, just a guy who he just kind of went under the radar because he didn't have the stats, but the potential was always there. And then once he got to a place where he was actually utilized in the proper way, he just exploded as a star. I love. I hope that if he somehow made it to 30, which there's no shot in hell at this point,
I
would
so.
Run it up there if I was the Eagles, man. Run that shit up there. So I like that pick personally. I'll go Washington.
So, oddly enough, Washington is up next. I find it highly unlikely he's going to be available at this point, but Witherspoon's there. They need help at corner. I think they'll be rushing this pick up there.
I think there's a chance he
there's a chance. I'll be surprised.
Just because there's so many tackles and first of all, a lot of quarterbacks are going to go. There's a few edge rushers. It kind of depends on what you think of, like the third edge rusher, which would probably be Nolan Smith or Lucas Van Ness, and then the third tackle. It's kind of where you think they'll actually go. I had them taking a corner. I just had Joey Porter Jr. going there because I had Devin Witherspoon going to the Patriots. So I don't mind that pick. I do think they're going to. I think it's a little high for Brian Branch, but I think they're going to go secondary here. I really do. That's where they need some help.
I'll be surprised if they go with something other than secondary, unless just all three corners are off the board and they got to take someone. So then, you're up next.
So in mine, I had Keon White. I think it's probably a little high for him. I'll go Joey Porter Jr. here.
Yeah.
I think he kind of fits Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin and just very, very physical cornerback, really good.
That would make too much sense. His dad played there.
Yeah, exactly. I just think I think it's kind of.
I wouldn't be surprised if they trade up to get him.
Yeah, I just think it makes a lot of sense, and I actually love that pick. I like it more than who I actually have on my real mock draft, just because of the way our board fell here. So yeah, I'll go Joey Porter.
If you tell me actually Porter's the second corner off the board outside of Witherspoon or Gonzalez, I wouldn't be shocked.
Of course, no, of course. It's kind of what you appreciate a little bit more. I do think him and Witherspoon are actually pretty similar players, actually. But if you let one's tape, slightly better than the other, I mean, they're pretty interchangeable. That I do think personally, just based on the size, that Gonzalez is the consensus number one. But I wouldn't be surprised if Witherspoon went ahead of him if a team just liked his tape a little bit more. I really wouldn't be super surprised, but don't expect it.
So Detroit is up next. The board did not really fall their way.
Again.
They could go secondary again. I think it's too early for Brian Branch, though.
I think this is a no-brainer. They traded their boy.
Yeah. I'm blanking. I didn't get much sleep last night, though, so I'm. Maybe
they traded Hawkinson.
I was honestly looking at Quentin Johnston, just cause.
I don't think that's a bad pick. They did just re-sign Marvin Jones again today, for what it's worth. So they're kind of stacked in the receiver room. I'd be surprised if they went receiver first round.
I would too, but they need a big body receiver. Everyone else is kind of medium sized.
Yep.
I don't. If they go tight end, I'm not sure it's first round. So this we're going to disagree on this one.
No, all good.
But they missed out on Jalen Carter. I really like Kalijah Cansey more than I probably should, even though he went to Pitt. He's undersized, but I mean the dude's athletic and just a good ball player, I think.
Yep.
And I think Dan Campbell's gonna really like him.
That's a good pick. I like that a lot. I really, really do.
I'm also kind of in a camp of course we saw it with Aaron Donald, but I need to see like him get drafted that high before I mock it. But Aaron Donald was drafted that high, and they're about the same size.
Yeah, he was 10, but I totally agree. I think it's totally fair to always take size into account, but just because you're a certain size doesn't mean that you can't play ball or you can play ball for what it's worth. I mean, I think that if you have the athleticism and the strength, then the fact that you're maybe 20 pounds, and you can always put on a little bit of weight, not too much, obviously, because you don't want to ruin the athleticism, but, he can go to the league and put 10, 15 pounds on it. I don't think it'll affect him too much. I think he's going to be a really good, pass rushing D tackle, which is kind of the way the league is moving. The big guys are kind of, they're phasing out.
Well, I was just going to say, Middlecoff just said one time, I remember, I argue you draft both in the first round, but history shows you can find edge rushers in round 2 or 3. Yeah. You don't really find really good interior defensive linemen in rounds 2 or 3. Aaron Donald, Kenny Clark, 2 of the best were drafted in the first round.
Good point.
Fletcher Cox, another one.
Yeah, good point. So Fletcher Cox was a first rounder.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, Bucks, this is really where my board just got to a point where I absolutely fucking hated it.
Oh,
I guess that's
when it gets murky here.
I guess it's everybody's board. I don't like this pick, but I think that this guy is going to go maybe a little bit higher than people think because I think people can see him as kind of a hybrid linebacker that can really rush the passer and also, play off-ball linebacker. Drew Sanders out of Arkansas.
Okay.
I think it's probably a little high for him. I think he's probably more end of the first round, high second round, but just what I had here, like I said, I don't really like it. I think they're so shitty. There's a lot of different ways they can really go here. They're going to go BPA, so if one of these other guys falls, they could, but that's who I went with.
I wouldn't be shocked if he snuck in. One thing we have to remember with these first-round picks now, and it's kind of been the trump card the last couple of years, and it's become the trend. With that fifth-year option, teams are going to, kind of take a chance on you and not really go by value and be like, hey, we really like this guy and we want to get that fifth-year option. That was one of the reasons why Green Bay tried really hard to get back into the first round to get Christian Watson, but Minnesota wouldn't let them. Of course, I argue, even though I think Devontae Wyatt's going to be a good player, just take Watson there and get the fifth-year option, but to each their own. Mm-hmm. So now Seattle, I
thought this was kind of an easy one too, in my opinion, for Seattle. I think this guy kind of fell right into the lap based on our board, but who do you got?
Well, I've been penciling in a receiver for them just because I think they need a number 3, but Smith and Jigba's off the board, and I feel like that's the one that they need.
Yeah.
The kind of guy that they need. And so I don't think it'll be Johnston. Who else is on the board? I don't think it's a tight end. I don't think it's Brian Branch.
That's who I had for what it's worth.
I don't think so.
I think that's a Pete Carroll pick. I really do.
I'll be surprised if Branch goes that high, honestly. I wasn't impressed with him at the combine.
Yeah.
This is about Myles Murphy territory. If they really wanted to double down on D-line, I think he could play, a couple positions on the line, so I wouldn't be surprised by that. And honestly, I don't want to say this is too low for him, but this is probably this is about right. I would argue.
Yeah.
So I'll go with Murphy.
Okay, I like that pick. I love my Chargers pick. Can you guess who I'm going to go?
Jordan Addison.
No.
That was mine. this week, and I was like,
Bijan.
I really like that.
Bijan. I know
That
they
makes
need
a lot
help.
more sense than people think.
I know they need defense, but the reason Justin Herbert hasn't been flourishing the way, in my opinion, the way that he could outside of like play calling and shit like that is they just haven't had a solid in between the tackles runner. It's they don't have to respect the run, and for a dickhead, their head coach always talks about engage, teams having to engage them in blocks and always have to make tackles. Like they're a pretty finesse team, and I think if they can get I don't think this is too high for him because apparently how.
No, I actually think I still am a firm believer. I think he's going to the top 20. I just don't know where.
I love that pick. It's probably my favorite pick outside of like the top 8 that I have. I just think it makes too much sense. I think, yeah, you need defensive help, but you have a generational talent at quarterback that you really need to help. Your receiving core is just looks like shit outside of Mike Williams. Keenan Allen is kind of a shell of himself. You need a playmaker on offense. And to be honest with you, even if they end up keeping Austin Eckler, I think that this might even be a cooler pick because you can just run a lot of two running back sets. They won't really know what's going to happen, and he can play the Austin Eckler role and the between the tackles role. They need a guy in the red zone that they can just pound the rock with. I fucking love this pick. It's probably one of my favorite picks.
Eckler's a good player. I'm just not sure he's like an RB1.
He's not. Yeah, I think he could be an RB1 if you have an RB2 that you can like. If they had like you guys,
yeah.
Not that he's similar to Aaron Jones, but if they had what's his name,
AJ Dillon.
If they had a guy like that who is probably a 2, but a 2 that you can really pound the rock with late in games and in the red zone and short yardage. Like they just don't have a short yardage back from what I understand. I mean, maybe they have some shitty guy that's 2 that's kind of big, but
some fullback.
I absolutely love that pick so much.
All right, so Baltimore.
I think it's a no-brainer, honestly.
Well,
I had Smith and Jigba here, but that's just because I had him kind of fall.
It depends. I mean, I'm not convinced they're taking a receiver.
I'm not either because that's not their ethos, but it depends on what happens with Lamar. In my opinion.
I know.
Like if nobody trades for him draft night, like I don't think they have a fucking choice. Like you just gotta get the best receiver on the board. Like for better or worse, like whether that actually makes your team, better. It's kind of something you have to do. So
Quentin Johnston's right there. I mean,
that's
big body receiver.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll do it.
He's
Quentin
a Lamar
Johnston.
Jackson receiver in general. Just big catch radius. I don't think he's going to be that good in the NFL. I think he's kind of like a Kevin White type of player, where he's fine, but I don't think he'll ever be like some dominant number 1 receiver. Maybe I'm wrong, but I really like that pick too. So
yeah, if it was I would feel better about if they took like a Deonte Banks or someone there if Johnston was off the board already, because Addison and Flowers I'm kind of lukewarm on. I think Johnston does have a better or a higher ceiling than them, but he's on the board. I think they'll have a hard time passing on him.
I agree. Vikings, man, I don't fucking know. I think they could go receiver here because they lost Adam Thielen, but I
they
really think
really got to get better defensively.
I was just going to say that. So I'll do the player that I had earlier. I'll take Keion White here.
Okay.
Just somebody in the just again not a pick that I really love, but I totally agree with you. I think they could use a receiver, but where they need a receiver at, they can get a good one in the second round. I think one of these guys like your Jordan Addison or something like that's going to fall a little bit. Maybe not him in particular, but like one of these guys who are like, 4 through 6 on people's draft board at receiver will be there in the second round and they can get them there. I don't hate that pick actually.
Well, I thought you were going to go with Deonte Banks, so I'm a little surprised with this pick. Although I don't think Keion White's out of the question in the first round. Daniel Jeremiah, who I respect a lot, is very high on him. And it's been very weird with Zadarius Smith. Zadarius Smith requested a release. The Vikings did not give it. It's getting weird. Take him away. They don't have much of a pass rush outside of Danielle Hunter, so I think this makes a lot of sense. Jacksonville. This is easy, I think. They let go of Shaq Griffin. They don't really have a corner on their roster outside, now that he's gone. Other than, I'm sorry, Tyson Campbell has emerged into a pretty good starter. So I'm going to go with Deonte Banks.
Okay, I like that pick. I think he's going to be a really good player. Cornerback's one of those positions where like you really never know. And maybe that's just because my team's been consistently
traits. That's why I think Brian Branch is going to fall. I don't think his traits are going to translate.
Yeah. So okay, that's fair. Giants, I mean, they're another team that, in my opinion, you know how I feel about the Giants. I think they still have an absolutely dog shit roster. They don't have many good players at a lot of positions. And I think when you don't have a lot of good players at a lot of positions, you kind of have to go D-line or O-line. And I think they'll probably go D-line here. I had Miles Murphy, but obviously he's off the board here. So I'll go Brian Bresee. I don't love it.
Okay.
But just somebody who's going to be high on the draft board at this point for probably a lot of teams. I think this is maybe slightly high. He might be like very end of the first round, high second round player, but that's who I'll take.
I'm glad you didn't take a receiver. A lot of people have been penciling in a receiver for them, and it's not that I don't think that they need one. I think they do, but they need a single type, and it's a guy like Quentin Johnston. So if they're going to take one in the first round, it's going to be him, and they're going to probably...
Guys are small.
Yeah, I know. And all their guys on their roster are between 5'8" and 6 feet tall. So they need big bodies, and Johnston is that guy. They're probably going to have to trade up for him. But this is a draft class that's loaded with receivers who are big. You're not going to find very many slot receivers in this draft. So they can take one later. I think we need to prepare that they go with O-line here probably.
Yeah.
So Dallas is up.
Nobody. Next.
They've done a really good job of patching up their holes this offseason.
Yeah, I mean they look good, man. They scare me. I would not be, don't tell anybody this, but I would not be surprised if they won the division this year.
As it stands, I wouldn't either.
I think it's going to be whoever's healthier out of the Eagles and the Cowboys is going to win, but I think they're going to be right around the same record. Probably 11, maybe 12 if they overachieve, maybe 13, but probably right in that 11-12 range for both teams.
I don't see, these are like, they could go with interior D-line, but the three that I think are going to go in the first round are off the board.
Yeah.
At this point, I don't think they'll take an edge rusher. And they've kind of patched up their receiving core by trading for Brandon Cooks. This kind of leaves only one option, I think. They just lost Dalton Schultz, and there are two really good tight ends here. I don't think that this is what they would want to do, but it's just the way the board fell. I'll go with Dalton Kincaid, I guess. I mean, people have grown kind of lukewarm on Michael Mayer. I don't know why, but...
That's who I have them taking in mind for what it's worth. I think that Jerry wants to sell tickets, so he wants a good offense, and that's why they always have a good offense. I think they would like to go O-line here, to be honest with you, because they want to go. Glory days is fucking hilarious because they never went on a playoff run, but when they were really, really good there in that little stretch, for like 4 or 5 years, it was because they had top 1 or 2 offensive lines in the league. But I could totally see. Tight end here. I think that's going to be popular in mock drafts, whether they actually go that way or not. So I totally see that.
It depends. I don't know. They might trade up and get someone if they really like them, but they might just sit back and be like, how's the board falling? Okay, we'll take this position, this player at this position, or whatever. I'm curious what you have for our boy here.
I think that they could go wide receiver here, but I think that they've been kind of preaching it. If you listen to what they're saying, they don't want him to run as much. I think they're really going to try to protect Josh Allen a bit more.
Please run the ball.
Yes. So I took probably, if you take out like Skoronski, who's, could be a guard and things like that, I think the best, guard is going to be Osiris Torrance from Florida. I think it's it's not a sexy pick, but it's probably a pick they should make, frankly. I mean,
I think they need to go O-line.
Yeah, so I'm going to take probably the best O-lineman here, even though it's not a tackle. You can get good guards in later rounds, but if you get a guy that you can plug and play and start, he's going to be at least an average starter right away. just take him. I like this pick. I don't see me changing this pick. I see that mock draft. I think they take this guy. So
I would have probably gone with Darnell Wright. They got to fix that right side of their line. But they need help in the interior, too. Cincinnati now. I have no idea.
yeah.
I mean, they've kind of patched up their O-line after adding Orlando Brown, so I think the tackles are out. They could go DB. The corners are mostly off the board, though. I just don't. I don't think Brian Branch is going to make it. Like, he could be a Jesse Bates replacement, but I see him as a slot, not really as a free safety.
Yeah.
So I think he's out. I guess I'll go with the last tight end. I'll go with Michael. I guess I'm going to keep penciling in Michael Mayer for them.
They're going to give Joe Burrow all the help he can get. I don't think that's a bad pick at all. I personally.
This is a really good corner class. I think if you don't get one of those top 4 guys, you can find one in the second or third round.
Like I said, once we get down to the end here, I mean, these are all like probably second rounders on people's boards, but I just took Mozzie Smith. I know they need some interior help on the line. I think he's probably, from what I understand about our board, even though I don't have it in front of me, he's probably the best interior D lineman left. Maybe I'm wrong. One guy I'm forgetting. I do think he's probably a higher ceiling player. Whether he gets there or not, who knows? But I like that pick. And to be honest with you, if he's there at 30, I wouldn't be surprised one bit if the Eagles took him. So I'll take him there at 29.
I'm not going to do it, but Brian Branch is sitting there. And did they lose Avonte Maddox?
No, he's our nickel corner though. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Like, what's his contract situation? I feel like he's about.
They just signed him.
Okay, never mind.
So he has 2 years left.
Never mind. I think they're okay.
No, I could totally see that though. They need a safety. I mean, they got Edmonds from the Steelers, who I think will be one of the starters, but they're pretty barren at that position. But Howie Roseman it's so obvious what he's going to do. Like, now that I've like really been into the draft for like 7-8 years now, like I just know what he's going to do. I don't know why I was thinking all this weird shit at 10. Like, it's going to be an offensive or defensive lineman, and obviously not my pick. But I would be, if Brian Branch is gone, I could see that. But like, I could see them taking one of these wide receivers to plug at the third receiver spot. I have Jordan Addison.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Play slot, because Quez Watkins literally, like, you could put a decent percentage on him being the reason we lost the Super Bowl with just his shit and other games we lost that year. He's the reason we lost the Redskins game earlier in the year. I mean, it's just, he's fast and he's good at taking the top off of a defense, but he's just not a reliable receiver. He's probably more of a 4 or 5. But yeah, I don't know who you would take.
I don't think it's out of the question that they go O-line at this pick. I don't think they will at 10 unless it's Skronsky. Addison makes sense, but he's on the board. I think he's going to go in the first round. Not really a need for them, but I could see Howie just being like, fuck it, best player available. And I'm going to go with Darnell Wright.
I like that. I had him going much higher in mine.
Yeah, I think he's going to be drafted much higher than this.
Yeah. I like that pick. Then I'll take Jordan Addison on the Chiefs. I mean, yeah. I think it's pretty obvious that, listen, obviously they would like, a lineman or something. I know the ethos of Andy Reid and what he really wants to do, but at the end of the day, I mean, he won the Super Bowl with no receivers, but that doesn't mean you keep trying that. So, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, I think any of these guys could go here. It's kind of what but I think they're similar players. I think they're both small, kind of shifty players. That's fine for Mahomes because he's really accurate. He doesn't necessarily need a big body, though I always think that's good to have on your team.
I would argue they have that in Travis Kelce, even though it's not a receiver.
I agree. They split him out a lot. I mean, he doesn't.
And MVS is a big guy too.
Yeah, so I'll go Zay Flowers here, actually.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with Addison.
Or I'll go Addison.
Okay.
I'll go Addison, actually. I think Addison's probably a little bit better, played at, a slightly bigger program. I'll go there.
I mean, between the last couple picks, like, I don't see a scenario where, and I was just going to say, Kansas City, if Darnell Wright was there, I think that they would draft him. Maybe an edge rusher. I had them taking Will McDonald in mine this week. But I don't see a scenario where at least 3 of these receivers aren't drafted in the first round. It could be as high as 4. And Addison makes the most sense to me. Flowers is 5'9". That might hold him back.
Yeah, I like that pick. Okay. Jordan Addison.
Yeah. So, wrapping it up, I don't dislike it.
I actually kind of like that. Like, it's way better than the one I have here on the paper, so I don't mind it.
The only one where I was pretty surprised was Keon White.
Yeah, I don't like it. I was just kind of looking at a draft board and looking at needs. Once I got down to some of these teams I was a little less familiar with, and I just kind of plugged it.
I'm also not convinced Brissy is going to be in the first round either. He might sneak in late, though, which is what we have. But
yeah.
But recap, Carolina, we have taken quarterback C.J. Stroud. Houston taking quarterback Bryce Young. Arizona taking edge rusher Will Anderson. Indianapolis taking quarterback Anthony Richardson. Seattle taking defensive lineman Jalen Carter. Detroit taking cornerback Christian Gonzalez. I only wrote last names. Las Vegas taking quarterback Will Levis. Atlanta taking Tyree Wilson, not Jackson, which we have said before on this podcast.
I still say. Sounds better.
It does sound better. Chicago taking offensive lineman Peter Skoronski. Philly taking edge rusher Nolan Smith. Tennessee taking edge rusher Lucas Van Ness. Houston taking wide receiver Jackson Smith and Jigba. New York Jets taking offensive tackle Paris Johnson Jr. New England taking offensive tackle Broderick Jenkins. Green Bay taking tight end Darnell Washington. Washington Commanders taking cornerback, I almost said Akella Witherspoon, but he plays somewhere else. Devon Witherspoon. Pittsburgh taking cornerback Joey Porter Jr. Detroit taking interior defensive lineman Kalijah Cansey. Tampa taking, who is Sanders? Why am I blanking on him?
Drew Sanders.
Oh, Drew Sanders. Oh, that one was another surprise. Tampa taking linebacker Drew Sanders. Seattle taking edge rusher Miles Murphy. Miami doesn't have a first-round pick. Los Angeles Chargers drafting running back Bijan Robinson. Baltimore taking wide receiver Quentin Johnston. Minnesota taking edge rusher, defensive lineman hybrid Keon White. Jacksonville taking cornerback Dion Banks. New York Giants taking interior defensive lineman Brian Brzee. Dallas taking tight end Dalton Kincaid. Buffalo taking interior offensive lineman Osiris Torrance. Cincinnati taking tight end Michael Mayer. New Orleans taking interior defensive lineman, is it Mozzie Smith?
That's how I said it.
Philadelphia taking offensive tackle Darnell Wright. Kansas City rounding out taking wide receiver Jordan Addison. So that is our combined mock draft.
I like it.
Yeah, it's not bad. I like it. Just a few things. We don't have to go over it a lot. I think Levis is now the quarterback that's going to fall.
I could see that. I saw a pic of him today where he's just jacked up, and I don't think that's necessarily.
I'm not sure he falls outside the top 10 because if he starts slipping, like if he gets by Detroit at 6, and probably even Vegas at 7. Maybe I would say
the Commanders,
Tampa, Washington, maybe Tennessee sneak up there and trade up there and get them.
I can see that, but I also could see like a situation where like a couple years ago where the Patriots just stayed put. Everyone was like, "You're probably going to have to trade up to get Mac Jones," and they just stayed, and he just kind of fell to him. And I could see that. I think
it could.
So yeah, I mean, we'll see.
All right, so that will do it for us this week. I'm glad we could do this. I'm going out of town over the weekend, and I wanted to squeeze this in on Monday, but at the risk of going another week because I like to release these mock drafts on Monday for whatever reason. So James, I appreciate you coming on and talking football.
All right,
Less than a month till the draft. You know how much we love the draft.
I'm fucking excited. But all right, brother. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Later.
Later.